In 2009, a company in Belarus found an interesting binary, um, and because they wanted to analyze the binary, they sent it over to a company in America called Semantic. And a man named Eric Chen, who was a security engineer for Semantic at the time, um, him and his team looked at this weird binary, and it ended up being what we know today as the Stuxnet virus. Um, what's interesting about the Stuxnet virus is that usually viruses don't have 0 days at all. It's very rare for them to have 0 days, to have a single 0 day. But what was special about it is like this virus had 4 0-day vulnerabilities attached inside of it. And the sophistication level of this malware is just so above anything else. So you could tell that this was not just someone messing around, just trying to get a hold of something, or like this was built for a specific reason by someone important. By like they had quality assurance, it's been checked, double checked. Like this took years to come together. So when Eric and his team looked at it, they knew that they had never seen anything like it before. And in some of the resources that I saw, Eric and his team usually can identify what the purpose or like what a virus is going to do within like a couple minutes, about 5 to 20 minutes, he said. But this took them 3 months to understand, just to even understand what the virus was even trying to do. And with that, they were able to, well, in those 3 months, they found something interesting. They ended up seeing that this, in the code, it had phrases like step 7 and WCC in them. And when they looked them up, they saw that they were scatter strings. And what a scatter string is, it's used for programmable logic control, which again what does that mean? A PLC essentially is code that's used for using machines or things that they'd use in factories for like assembling cars or conveyor belts and stuff like that. So factory language. And no one knew what it was. So Eric and his team were scouring the internet, asking anybody if they had any information on this code that they just like found or like were just researching. So now that I've talked about how Stuxnet was kind of talked about and how like who looked at it at the time, Iran was just kind of developing their nuclear program. Their nuclear program started in the late 90s, but it had really not really gotten off the ground like that. But in the United Nations treaty, it's supposed to say anybody's able to work with nuclear anything as long as they're not making a nuclear bomb. Like you can do nuclear research, but you have to register it and you have to declare it, essentially let the world know that you're working on it, where, how much, all that. And because Iran had this factory that they had that people had gotten intelligence on, but no one knew what they were trying to do, or what they were using it for. Other countries got wary, and other countries wanted to know what was going on in there. And this factory that it was being made at was the Natanz factory in Iran. And that's essentially what people are saying what was Stuxnet's like one of their main targets, what one of their main targets was for. And there are reports that are saying Stuxnet has been reported being seen like in other parts of the world, but Iran was its biggest target, where like they'd seen it the most in Iran. So that means it's most likely that Iran was, like, the country of Iran was their biggest target. No one claimed credit for the attack at the time, so no one knew where it was coming from. No one knew anything about it, but they just knew that a sophisticated piece of malware got into this nuclear factory that's not on a network. So like there's still skepticism on how it necessarily got there. Some people say that they snuck a spy in there. Some people say that like an employee could have just, like, they were distributing the malware on like random USB drives or just random things everywhere, and that's how someone just human error, just plugged something into the mainframe or like used a phone in the area and they got on the network that way, because the Natanz factory is it's on its own network. It's not connected to the internet. There's no public access to it. So it was definitely done from the inside out. But yeah, so the purpose of Stuxnet was for factory places like this. And so essentially what the Natanz factory would have these centrifuges to which would be made to work on nuclear sites. And what these centrifuges did was get uranium, like they were used to make uranium, to get the uranium through. And centrifuges are used for the nuclear process, and the centrifuges spin at a specific rate to keep the uranium going and separated. But what the Stuxnet virus would once it got on the mainframe, it would lay dormant and record 30 days worth of positive controls, and then once it hit those 30 days, it would essentially block out all the negative readings. So it would just keep sending those positive readings that it was getting through the system, like a loop back feed in for a video camera or something, like a security camera or something like that. And in my research, it was saying that the 30 days was a very specific number, because that's how long it would take for the centrifuges to get revved up real quick. But what Stuxnet really did, that was just part of it. And so the second part of what Stuxnet's execution was to take control of the system, slow it down real slow, and then speed it up real fast, so it would not try to knock the centrifuges off their system and try to make them spin out of control. So they would knock over and just cause havoc and almost leak uranium out into the system and knock over other centrifuges, to essentially just make a mess and just try to get rid of the entire factory in and of itself, if at all possible. And Iran being the way that it was, just knowing their political situation, they felt as if it was the United States and Israel they felt as if it was a joint attack from Israel and the United States, even though no one's claimed official responsibility for it. But according to other people, there are records that IAEA documents that there was records and IAEA documents that were released that stated that Stuxnet damaged thousands of centrifuges before the year 2010. So it did. So it means that it took a while for the Natanz factory to figure out what was going on, but it was still prevalent and still there. In the end, some people say that the Stuxnet virus didn't really do anything. It delayed the nuclear program, but it didn't necessarily stop the nuclear program from happening. It delayed them for maybe 6 months to a year, maybe, but it didn't do any serious damage. So it did what it was supposed to do in the sense of activating, but it didn't possibly stop Iran from continuing to improve their nuclear program. The reason that I wanted to talk about this was because this is part of what is now, as we know, as cyber warfare, and this was one of the first known cyber attacks that ever occurred in history. And so this was this one piece was one, not just a technical attack, but a political attack as well, from wherever it may have came from. But this was the start. This was almost like the dawn of cyber warfare and cyber attacks, and so a new landscape, a new type of warfare started to come out from this, and saw that cyberspace can be used as a battlefield. So Iran has been noted as saying that this was an act of war. Whoever sent it, this was an act of war. And there are authors like Kim Zetter, author of Countdown to Zero Day, who pretty much talks about this in depth. Who talks about the Stuxnet incident from like beginning to end. Spent years working on this. So that is like, as far as experts go, she's the one that would be able to speak on this a lot better than I can, and give more detail to it. But this was a very interesting read. This was very interesting to get a hold of this information, because again, this is almost like the dawn of like cyber warfare as we know it, and like this is where the landscape kind of goes to now. So thanks for listening. I'm going to tag all the resources that I got my information from to the videos here, and thanks for listening.